Good morning. My name is Ariel Tabson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Welcome to Talking Traffic Safety. Today we are airing live from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office's Facebook page. Feel free to explore this page for traffic safety information and educational resources. Today's episode will feature 3 subject matter experts to discuss various topics related to Thanksgiving holiday travel. I will serve as your moderator, and if you would like to participate, please submit your questions in the comments section. Each question that I mentioned will appear on the screen below. If we don't get to your question during the show, email info@tntrafficsafety.org so we can answer you. But thank you for joining us. We're very excited to be here today. So let's go ahead and introduce our panel. Our first speaker is Sergeant Aaron Loden from the Ray County Sheriff's Office. Welcome, Aaron. Tell us about you and what you do.
Hello, Ariel. Thank you for having me on today. I'm Sergeant Aaron Loden. I've been with the Ray County Sheriff's Office for 12, going on 13 years now, and I'm assigned to the Traffic Division along with the School Resource Division and Special Events and Functions of the Sheriff's Department.
Well, welcome, Aaron. We're happy to have you today. We're going to go ahead and introduce our second speaker, who is Megan Cooper, the Tennessee Public and Government Relations Consultant from AAA, the Auto Club Group. Welcome, Megan. Tell us about you and what you do.
Good morning, and thank you, Ariel. I work for AAA, and a lot of times people think of us for our roadside assistance, which is a big part of our company. But what a lot of people don't realize is that we have been embedded in the traffic safety community for years and years. And so some of the best parts of my job involve going into the local community and schools and sharing some of our traffic safety programs. The other side of my job is working with local news media and local legislators to also push some of those traffic safety and safe driving messages.
Thank you, Megan. It's a pleasure to have you. Our third speaker is Kathy Wright. She is the Education Director from the Kyle W. Cannell Memorial Foundation. Welcome, Kathy. Tell us about you and what you do.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Wright with the Kyle Cannell Don't Drive Drowsy Foundation. I talk to teens across the state of Tennessee about their need for 8 to 10 hours of uninterrupted sleep and the dangers of driving sleep impaired. And people may wonder why this cause is so close to my heart. It's because Kyle was my nephew, a 17-year-old junior in high school, taking a walk around the block with a friend when a young 17-year-old driver fell asleep at the wheel and came up on the sidewalk where Kyle was walking and killed him. Kyle was my parents' only grandson, my sister's only son, and Katie and Kelsey's only brother. The driver's decision to drive that night when he knew he was sleepy changed everything about my family. And I'm so happy to be here this morning and talk to you all about drowsy driving because in November, in the state of Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee proclaimed November as Drowsy Driving Awareness Month.
That's really great information, and thank you for sharing it with us. Really appreciate having all of you here today. And as you can see, we're getting some great comments from the public, and that's going to continue to happen throughout the episode. So we'll pause and put up those questions and comments as we receive them. So let's go ahead and just jump into the discussion. The Thanksgiving holiday season is a time when many people travel long distances to spend time with family and friends. November is typically the most highly traveled month of the year. And so today we're going to discuss a variety of topics to keep everyone safe across Tennessee roadways. Megan, let's start with you. How should families prepare for Thanksgiving holiday travel?
So this year, Thanksgiving looks a little different. AAA has done, we typically do a survey, and this year is no different in that the majority of people will be taking road trips. So if you're planning on road trips, there are definitely some things that you can do to plan ahead to help your trip go smoothly and safely. So if you're planning on taking a trip, planning ahead is vital. So much is changing due to COVID-19. Things are changing every single day. So while you're planning your trip, make sure that you're not just planning from point A to point B. Make sure that you're taking a look at all those stops along your route. And you're looking for things like, are there mask mandates? Are there quarantine orders or restrictions? So as you take your trip and you're building in those stops, make sure that you're prepared for anything that might happen along your route. If you're taking a longer trip, maybe you're staying in a hotel, go ahead and call that hotel before you arrive, just so that you're prepared. They may be limiting some services and things just may not be open. AAA has several helpful resources for drivers. We have a COVID-19 travel restrictions map that covers not only the state of Tennessee, but the entire country. We also have a TripTik website that allows you to plan out those different stops along your road trip. So planning ahead is really vital in a pandemic situation.
These are very helpful tips, especially traveling during a pandemic. And so people can learn more about this information on AAA's website, right? www.aaa.com.
Absolutely.
Great. Awesome. So people can go to that website to find more of your tips. Let's move on to Kathy. We know that traveling a long distance can often make you sleepy, and people have trouble with that sometimes. So what are safety tips to stay awake while traveling for Thanksgiving?
The number one step is to not leave at night. This used to be the practice so many years ago. Parents would leave about 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so the kids would be asleep in the back seat and they wouldn't have to listen to them fight the entire trip. And that's not really the case anymore. The kids have their devices and everyone does their own thing. But it's so important for the driver to not leave at night because it's dark and it's quiet, just like it is when you go to bed at night. And you're barely moving, you're barely breathing when you're driving a long distance. So your body may think that you're asleep. If you left the house at 10 o'clock for a trip, but the night before and the night before and the night before you went to bed at 10 o'clock, your body is going to think you're asleep. So it's really important to get a good night's sleep before hitting the road and leave during the daylight hours. And as far as traveling, make sure that it's best to take your food with you because it's very difficult to find a healthy meal on the road, and you don't want to stop for a triple cheeseburger and fries. That's hard to digest and it doesn't do much for your health. But if you are stopping, get something with some proteins that will keep you full longer, and drink water. Have lots of bottles of water in the car and just drink and drink and drink, because you need to stop every few hours and get out and stretch, and drinking that much water will remind you that you need to stop and get out of the car.
These are some really good tips for people to know. And as we mentioned before, really planning ahead is the best thing that you can do to try to avoid things like this. And if you do get tired, maybe plan certain areas to be a rest point where you could possibly stay the night at a hotel or just take a break. So these are great things that people need to know. Let's go to Megan. I want to ask you more about preparing for Thanksgiving travel. So what are some vehicle maintenance tips to prepare drivers for Thanksgiving holiday travel?
Yeah, so the most important thing before you even leave your driveway is to make sure that your car is ready to take that trip with you. This year in particular, maybe your driving habits have changed. Maybe you used to commute to work and now you don't. So for a lot of people, a rule that you haven't driven your vehicle in the last couple of months or last couple of weeks as much as you used to. So for before you hit the road, you want to check things like making sure that your car is up to date on its maintenance. Have you gotten an oil change recently? Is it time for one? Go ahead and check your tires. You want to make sure that you have proper tread depth and that your tires are properly inflated. So your tires are where the rubber literally meets the road. So you want to make sure that those are checked out before you leave. Another common issue that we see are battery related issues. Batteries typically last about 3 to 5 years. So if your battery is nearing towards that 3-year mark, go ahead and have it tested before you leave. You want to make sure that it is charging properly and that you're not going to run into any issues or hiccups throughout your trip. Another very common thing that can go wrong and be very frustrating are your wiper blades. So you want to make sure that when you're using them, that they are cleaning your windshield completely, that they're not leaving any streaks behind. And the good thing about wiper blades is most auto parts stores that you were to purchase new wiper blades at will actually install them for you. So before you leave for your trip, just make sure that your car is ready to go with you.
Good. These are all very, very good tips for you to share, Megan. We have a question from the public, and I think it's a really good question. I'm going to read it to you guys, and let's talk about it. I am hearing you say that even during the COVID restrictions, you expect more holiday travel this year. We agree with you, but wondering if you have thoughts on why this may be occurring. Let's talk about this. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, November is known as being typically the most highly traveled month of the year due to Thanksgiving travel. And as Megan mentioned, there are COVID restrictions that may vary, maybe across the state or even across the nation. So I want to, in my opinion, we kind of really don't know if this is going to be a major travel period, at least in my opinion, because it is COVID. It's so unpredictable. But Megan, let me ask you, what are your thoughts?
So AAA normally does a Thanksgiving holiday travel forecast. This year, of course, looks a little bit different. This was completed back in October. And the numbers that we found were that about 50 million people were going to travel nationwide. In Tennessee, we found that about 1.2 million will be traveling. Of course, a lot has happened since the beginning of October. And so from our perspective, we're expecting for those numbers to likely be less on the actual holiday. And even though there are restrictions and the CDC is suggesting that the best way to avoid exposure to COVID-19 is to stay at home, we do expect for some people to get out and travel, whether that's whether that being they're more comfortable or they've just been cooped up for months and they need to get out of the house. Regardless, we do think that some people will still get out and travel for Thanksgiving.
Thank you for sharing that information. That's actually very helpful. And everyone in the public, feel free to continue making comments and asking questions because, of course, these are very important things for us to discuss. So let's get back to talking about sleep because anytime you travel, sleep is going to be something important. Kathy, how does a lack of sleep affect your body?
Lack of sleep affects your body in a couple of different ways. Let me say first that you need 8 to 10 hours of sleep in every 24-hour period if you're a teen and 7 to 9 hours if you're an adult. So if you're getting less than that or even way less than that and thinking you can make it up on the weekend, that's not going to happen. It's in every 24-hour period or it doesn't do you any good at all. So short-term effects of not enough sleep, it can affect your memory, your mood, your judgment, your risk-taking, you're more likely to take risks, and your stress level. As far as teens, this is coming up on a big test time of year for them, and I want them to know that if you're studying for a test and thinking that staying up all night is the best way to go, so it will be fresh on your mind, that's the worst way to go. You need to sleep on that information. It's called consolidating it or making it a memory so you can use it for the test on Friday or in a few years in college or in 20 years. You will have made it a memory. And that doesn't happen when you stay up all night. Long-term health effects of not enough sleep include obesity and diabetes, heart disease, stroke, cancer, and Alzheimer's. All of those diseases can be related back to your lack of sleep as a younger person. And I know everyone wants to be a healthy older person, and it starts when you are young. And it's pretty interesting to note that losing as little as 2 hours of sleep in a single night, 2 hours of sleep in one night, is equal to driving after drinking 3 beers. And of course, we would not ever even think about doing that, but we don't think twice about losing 2 hours of sleep many nights. So I would like everyone to think about those health consequences. It does catch up with you.
Wow. Well, Kathy, can you tell us, good morning, excited to see amazing highway safety professionals. Thank you, Shandy. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that. Kathy, I want to ask you, what are warning signs of fatigue while driving?
Sure. The number one warning sign that you are too sleepy to be in the driver's seat is thinking that cold air and loud music is going to get you safely to your destination. It might help you momentarily for just a few minutes because it wakes you up to what's going on, but it is not going to help you get there safely. And honestly, who wants to risk their life hoping that the air conditioning keeps them awake? That just seems ridiculous. But it does serve a purpose. Cold air and loud music, thinking that you need these two things, is the number one warning sign that you should get out of the driving seat as soon as safely possible. So heed that warning. Another warning sign is impaired vision and reaction time. There's a deer in the road, which is very common in November in Tennessee, and you're heading straight towards the deer thinking there's a deer in the road, when if you had enough sleep, you would be thinking, I need to do something differently to avoid this crash that I see coming right ahead of me. The next few warning signs remind me of teenagers in school. Trouble focusing, keeping your eyes open and your head up, daydreaming, yawning, rubbing your eyes. When these things happen, you need to get out of the car as soon as safely possible. Drifting from your lane and feeling restless, irritable, and aggressive.
Wow. These are really good points that you've made and things that people will commonly deal with and just ignore. And your body, as we know, will tell you what you need. Your body will give you signals of when it's time to go to sleep, and you have to listen to that. You have to listen to that because it's not worth falling asleep behind the wheel.
Drivers
Go ahead.
tell me that they had no idea they were going to fall asleep at the wheel, and that is not true. They knew that they had very little sleep the past few nights, and they knew that their head was bobbing, and they knew that they wanted the cold air blowing on their face, and then they fell asleep. You always have plenty of warning signs.
Those are good points. Let me ask you, Kathy, what should you do if you become sleepy behind the wheel?
So the Kyle Canal Foundation recommends that you pull over to a safe, well-lit location with the doors locked. Safe, well-lit, doors are locked. Have a caffeinated beverage, which means coffee. For teens especially, it does not mean an energy drink. They have too many health risks. So have a caffeinated beverage and a 30-minute nap. I know that sounds weird to drink coffee and nap, but it takes 30 minutes for the caffeine to kick in, and you can get a little sleep. When you wake up, I'm not saying that you're good to go, but you're better prepared to make a good decision. Am I okay to drive? Do I need to get a hotel? Should I go to plan B, C, D, which I hope you have those other plans? Your option is not to keep driving. You do not have to keep driving. You can do other things so that you will arrive alive. And for teens, I would like to say, if ever since lunch you have been thinking, I'm so tired, I can't wait to get home, and the bell rings at 3, and you think you're going to run out to the parking lot because your car is out there and the key's in your pocket, That is the absolute worst thing that you can do. Just because the car is in the parking lot does not mean you have to drive home. You've been thinking all afternoon, I'm so tired, then why would you go get in the driver's seat? Get on the bus, call your parents, get a ride with a friend, do something else. The option that you have to drive, you have other options, that you have more choices than that.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much. And a lot of people probably think, you know, oh, I only have 15 more minutes. I can make it. And sometimes that last 15 minutes could make the difference in whether or not you make it home. So this is very important information that people need to know. As we know, Thanksgiving tends to be a drinking holiday. We know that people like to get festive and get together at friends and family and enjoy some alcoholic beverages. So, Erin, tell us, what are the consequences if people decide to drink and drive?
Well, you know, the punishment for a first offense DUI in Tennessee can have a minimum sentence of up to 48 hours in jail, but can also be as much as 11 months and 29 days with fines, court costs, loss of license for a year, and even some community services assessed. Typically, the presumptive amount for a bond on a DUI charge is anywhere from about $1,500 to $2,000. And there can be factors included in that make it a felony, such as aggravating circumstances, which is having a child in the vehicle, or additional charges for open container, and your bail includes conditions as well. So it can be rather costly, even looking up to having an interlock device installed in your car that you have to blow into each time to get your vehicle to start to make sure that you're not impaired before you're behind the wheel.
For sharing that information. This is absolutely things that people need to know, that drinking and driving does have consequences. And even if you think you're okay, even if you're buzzed and you've only had a few, it doesn't matter, because that one drink can impair you. Megan, let's talk about people who are hosting events at home where people may be drinking. How can you be a good host to prevent your guests from drinking and driving?
Yeah, so the holiday season is a very happy time. People love to celebrate. People love to host things. So if you are hosting an event, especially one where you are serving alcohol, you need to plan ahead, not only for yourself, but for those that will be attending your party. So I would suggest for everyone to be first a friend and then a host. Don't let playing hosts and trying to make people be happy, don't let that interfere with being a good friend, and watching out for your friend's personal safety. So if you're hosting an event, be sure to have engaging activities that don't involve alcohol. The more engaged people are, the less active drinking that they will be doing. In the beginning stages of planning, as you're getting in those RSVPs, go ahead and make sure and either suggest that people bring a designated driver, or encourage them to bring a designated driver, or to plan for a safe way home. A good tip is, once people arrive, you can go ahead and take those car keys. That could help prevent some tricky situations. If people don't want to listen to reason at the end of the night, you already have their keys. And again, if you are hosting, and if someone shows up without a plan to get home safely, as a host, make sure that you are either providing them a place to stay, or that you are providing a safe way for them to get home, whether that's an Uber, a taxi, or even driving them, or someone sober driving them home at the end of the night, just to make sure that they are getting home safely. So while it's fun and it's great to be around friends, if you're hosting, you have that extra responsibility of making sure that everyone is safe.
Thank you for sharing that. People often might think that just because they're not the ones that are, out at a bar, just because you're at home, you feel more comfortable doing what you want to do. But hosts can be held liable. They can be held responsible if something bad happens and you let a guest leave your house drunk. So everyone has to play their role to keep everyone safe. let's start talking about medications, because as we get closer into the winter months, and especially with COVID and flu and a lot of things happening, and for a variety of reasons, people could be taking more medications this time of year. So, Kathy, tell us, how do medications tie into drowsy driving?
Well, on almost every bottle of doctor prescribed medication, it will have the may cause drowsiness warning. So, of course, you should be alert for that. But that also can affect other people differently. It may cause you to not be able to sleep for a few days. I'm one of those people, unfortunately. So I really hesitate before I take any medication. And if you're going on this Thanksgiving trip and you're having a cold come on or something and you're going to take some medication, I want you to have a backup driver like the co-pilot and have them alert to the situation that you may need to change drivers because of the way that the medication is going to affect you. You're going to be alert for it, but you may not know ahead of time how it will affect you. So always be concerned with the labels and how it affects you individually.
This is good to know. This is really good to know. Megan, how can people learn how medications can affect their driving?
So AAA has a really great resource for medications and how they might affect your driving ability. It's called roadwiserx.com. And this is an educational tool to kind of go through and see the effects of your medication, not only in regards to food and other medications, but really how they can affect your driving ability. So within this website, there is a search bar. Lots and lots of medications are included in this. So more than likely, your medications will be listed here. So as you go through this website, you can select all of the medications that you're taking. Now, as a caveat, before you make any changes to your medication, go ahead and talk to your doctor. While this is a great educational tool, those types of decisions need to be made by a doctor. So once you have typed in to search for all of your medications, you will, of course, come to a page where it will tell you those drug interactions. So you can learn more about your medication, you can see what foods interact with that medication, but it will also give you driver warnings. And this will list off all of the potential side effects that could impair your ability to drive. So difficulty concentrating, changes in behavior, all of those things. Most of the time, when we're taking a medicine, we think about the side effects in terms of how will this affect my daily life? Will it make me feel bad? Will it make me feel nauseous? And that's about as far as we go. But I really encourage those that are taking medication to follow that thought process and think about how it is affecting your driving. Because more than likely, when you're taking a number of medications, as Ariel said before, we're moving into flu season and cold season. So adding in things like Benadryl or Sudafed or allergy medicine can really throw a wrench in things. So once you have gone through the website and gotten all of your driver warnings, there is an option to print off those results to take those to your doctor. So if you see something that's concerning, or you see something that you had no idea about that could potentially affect your driving, it's an easy way to print those off and take those to your medical provider to have those safe driving conversations.
Wow, that was a lot of very, very helpful information. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat to the audience that www.roadwiserx.com is the website that we were going through, and it's here at the bottom of your screen. So if you do want to check your medications and see how they affect you, this is the website that you would need to go through. So thank you very much. Let's go ahead and pause with this conversation and take a question from the public. And this one comes from Kim Van Atta, where she says, how do you decide where to stop on the trip, and what's the best methodology, big word, thank you, Kim, to use to re-sterilize upon returning to your car? Megan, do you want to take this one?
Absolutely. So when you're planning your trip, of course, you also want to keep drowsy driving in mind. So ideally, if you're taking a longer trip, you'll be stopping about every 2 hours or every 100 miles. So in regards to COVID, anytime that you get out of your vehicle, you are potentially exposed to other people's germs. So whether it's running into the gas station to get a snack or use the restroom, or you're actually getting gas, make sure that you are prepared for that. So we always want to tell drivers to keep an emergency car kit, things like jumper cables, basic toolkits to handle some of those more simple problems on the roadway. But I would also suggest to keep your mask handy, keep some disinfecting wipes and some hand sanitizer in your vehicle as well. So while you're making these stops, best practice is to wash your hands after doing anything. If that's not available, go ahead and use that hand sanitizer. And at the end of the trip, when you get back, of course, make sure you're sterilizing everything. Because just simply leaving your house, you are exposed to not only COVID, but flu and cold and all kinds of germs. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. That was really helpful information. Appreciate that. Now, let's get back to talking about medications and driving. Erin, can you tell us what kinds of medications can impair your driving?
Well, most medications won't affect your ability to drive. It's more your prescription medicines and some even non-medications that have side effects. And those side effects cause the reactions to make it unsafe to drive. That includes sleepiness, drowsiness, blurred vision, even dizziness. If your prescription bottle has a label on it that says do not take with alcohol, that's the best practice to follow. Don't mix anything with that that you have been warned, not to consume. And that's where a lot of times law enforcement will see prescription medication has been mixed with a drink, and it's just that one drink that it takes to impair someone's ability to drive or operate that vehicle.
That's a really good point, is that since this is more of a little bit of a drinking holiday and people are going to be consuming alcohol, they could potentially be mixing that with their medications. So it's really important to read those labels to see how alcohol will affect or interact with that medication, or ask your doctor, of course. Always ask your doctor that prescribes the medicine. Okay. Let's continue, and I want to ask Kathy, can over-the-counter medications affect your driving? You previously, I think we had talked about allergy medicines, but tell us just in general.
Yes, so definitely over-the-counter medications can affect your driving. They may have the same may cause drowsiness warning, or they may not have the warning and they may cause drowsiness. You just, as I was saying previously, you just need to be alert to the changes in your body. And let's say Benadryl or Sudafed, you live in Tennessee, so you have terrible sinus issues, and you take one of those medications daily, and you think, it doesn't do anything to me. And then you're driving to grandma's house 3 hours away, and everything else in your life has been the same, but your head starts bobbing and you are thinking, how did I get here? I don't even remember driving the last 50 miles. The medication has affected you today. Some change in your body has made that medication do something differently, even though you've taken it every day for 5 years. These things happen. You have to be alert, as I was saying, to all the changes, especially when you're in the driver's seat. Some people may take diet pills, and they may make you jittery and nervous. And if you're not used to those and you're driving, that will affect your driving also. You won't be falling asleep, but you will be hypersensitive to everything. And that may make you lose your focus. So that's not good for your driving either. You just have to always be alert to the changes and don't think that I have to keep driving even though I'm feeling drowsy or even though I'm feeling jittery. You can make other changes to your driving.
Thank you. Erin, if people want to get rid of their medications, what is a way to safely dispose of them and where can they go?
Well, a lot of your counties in Tennessee have a drop box located somewhere inside the county. Specifically here in Ray County, we have several located in each end of the county. We have one at the sheriff's office and one on the north end of the county at one of the police departments. And you can take those medications there, whether they're unused, unopened, or have been used out of, or taken from a family member's house that no longer needs them, and put those in those boxes. And several times throughout the month, they're emptied. They're in secure locations, obviously, but you can take those there and drop them off to properly dispose of and keep them out of the reach of children, or from them getting into the wrong hands with someone that doesn't need them.
That's very good information, especially mentioning medications you're not taking anymore that could possibly be in your cabinet where your teenager or your children can get a hold of it. I mean, you definitely want to dispose of that and do it safely so that it doesn't get into the wrong hands. And we also want to take care of the environment. Flushing certain medications down the toilet or just throwing them and polluting, that affects the environment. So having a safe place to dispose of these medications is very important. And if you just don't know where to go, alert your local law enforcement or contact them and see if you're able to do the drop box or if there's a local pharmacy or such that will accept them. Let's move on and talk about something that's very important always traveling, where we need to be aware of other people that are on the road, especially the side of the road. So let's talk about National Traffic Incident Response Awareness Week. That was November 9th through the 15th. But this is something that we need to continue to be aware of. So Erin, I want to ask you, can you tell us what people should know about this Awareness Week?
Well, the Awareness Week, RAL, focuses on not just law enforcement, but also all of your highway incident responders, from your TDOT crews to your local tow truck drivers, your first responders, fire, EMS, everyone that's out there. Be aware and be alert. If you see lights flashing, go ahead and slow down. Specifically, even, move over if you see which side of the road that they're on, to give them enough room where they're working, if they may be on the shoulder or in a lane of traffic. Take that extra couple of steps to slow down, be prepared to stop or whatever may be happening at that incident site so that a worker is not struck by a vehicle. A lot of times we see situations where highway workers are struck by vehicles just because someone failed to slow down or was unattentive with their driving. And so when you approach those, always be alert, be attentive to what's going on around you and your surroundings. Be prepared for what's coming up ahead of you, and watch out for those workers. It's not just the workers, but it's law enforcement and first responders as well. So always be vigilant when you see lights flashing on the shoulder of the roadway or the lanes where work may be performed, even in work zones. Be alert to the workers that are in those zones and they're moving around.
So you mentioned we do have a move over law, which requires people to move over if you see anyone that's on the side of the road, like you mentioned. Are there any penalties if you don't adhere to that law?
There are. That law was passed several years ago, and there's a lot of signage if you see on the side of the interstates and state highways throughout Tennessee that reminds everyone, to move over or slow down for a stopped emergency vehicle. There are penalties that come along with that. Drivers can be ticketed, cited to court for it. And if you're cited to court, you can be prepared to have a fine, if you're especially found guilty of it. That's what that law is in place is for, to protect those workers that are out there. And so, yes, there are penalties. You can be ticketed, taken to court. And that's something that we don't want to have to do, is make a phone call to someone and say that someone lost their life, because of a irresponsible decision that someone made while driving. So watch for vehicles, move over, slow down, and be prepared at all times.
Thank you. And I mean, we're here in the South. We're all about common courtesy, and that's really kind of what it is. We see somebody that needs room, they need space, just give them that space so that they can do what they need to do safely. Just courtesy. Megan, what should drivers do to protect anyone who is pulled over or working on the side of the highway?
Yeah, so I think Erin covered it very well. But for drivers, make sure you're paying attention. Be very vigilant and looking for instances where there may be someone on the roadside. So as drivers, we're very focused on ourselves. We're not thinking about what's happening on the side of the road or on the shoulder. So the video that you're watching is actually from a different AAA club. They actually put GoPros on their tow trucks. And as you can see, these workers are very close to the edge of the road. And some of those cars are going very fast. So as a driver, if you see anyone on the side of the road, when you first see them, go ahead and start to attempt to move over. Best case is to move over and give them that room to do what they need to do. If for whatever reason you can't move over, slow down. The law is slow down or move over. And I don't mean slow down just a little bit. Go ahead and slow down 10 to 20 miles per hour slower than what you're going. Some instances you may need to slow down a lot slower than that. Just remember that their lives are literally on our shoulders. They are doing their job to help protect us as motorists. They have to go back to their family. When they're on the side of the road, they are attempting to do that job quickly and help everybody move traffic along. So as a driver, be courteous. Use that common courtesy and slow down and move over anytime you see anything on the side of the road, whether that's a traffic stop, a tow truck, a utility worker, or even just construction.
That video was very helpful so that people could actually see literally what it looks like for someone that's pulled over and trying to do that type of maintenance on a vehicle. And think about it this way as well. You traveling for Thanksgiving, if something happens to you and you need to pull over and handle anything that's going on with your car, you would want that space. You would want to be able to protect your passengers, your family, your animal, whatever it is that you're riding with. So we all need to move over, slow down, of course, and move over. Let's talk now about occupant protection, because we know that seatbelts are very important. From November 16th through the 29th, the Tennessee Highway Safety Office is partnering with law enforcement across the state for the Click It or Ticket campaign. So I want to ask you, Erin, what is Click It or Ticket?
Well, Ariel, Click It or Ticket, as you said, runs from November 16th through the 29th. And law enforcement agencies across not just the state of Tennessee, but across the nation are stepping up on enforcement to crack down on motorists who don't wear their seatbelts. It's not about the citations. Overall, it's about saving lives. And seatbelts do save lives. When you have a crash, if you don't have your seatbelt on, there's only about a 50% chance that you'll survive that crash. When you parents especially set the standard for children. If the parents aren't wearing their seatbelt, then that shows the child that hey, mom and dad don't have their seatbelt on, so why should I have mine on? Be a leader and set the example. Even teenagers in cars. Probably one of the things we see the most is a parent say, put that seatbelt on, or the cops are going to get you. We don't want to target anyone for that specifically, but wear your seatbelt at all times. It greatly reduces your chances of being ejected, especially during a crash. And if you become a projectile in a crash or ejected, you could possibly injure someone else in the car or even kill someone. And that's something that we hate to have to talk about. but it's just a fact. The proper seatbelt usage and proper restraint usage will greatly increase your chances in an automobile accident versus not being restrained at all.
That's really good information because as you mentioned, seatbelts, that's your first line of defense. That's something very easy to do that can make the difference in whether or not you survive that crash and how serious your injuries can be. And of course, we need to make sure that all children are properly restrained. And if you have any animals, make sure that they are kept how they need to be restrained. Let me ask you, Megan, what are some things that you educate people on when it comes to occupant protection?
Absolutely. So buckle up every trip, every time. Even if you're going down the street, if you're going somewhere close to home, always wear your seatbelt. And I would extend that to teen drivers. You're just starting your driving career. I hope that you would wear your seatbelt every trip, every time. But you are in a position to go ahead and set rules for your vehicle. So I would encourage you, regardless of who is riding with you in your vehicle, go ahead and set that rule that anybody in that vehicle is buckled up, whether it's friends, whether it's family. You as the driver are responsible for those passengers. And if they don't want to wear their seatbelt, they don't have to ride with you. So go ahead and start those habits early. And extend those throughout your driving career. Because again, seatbelts are the first line of defense in the case of a crash.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Megan. We just received a question from the public. So we're going to go ahead and address this from Miss Cynthia Michelle Tweed Holt. She says, if a driver does feel sleepy and needs to pull over, what do you, any of the panelists, recommend for safe places to do so? Knowing today's world, it isn't always easy to find a safe place to stop. So I'm going to start with Kathy. What would you advise on that question?
We always recommend the rest stops in Tennessee, and I researched that once recently, and there's hundreds of rest stops in Tennessee. I had no idea. I always stop at the same ones when I'm traveling, so I had no idea they're so prevalent. But a rest stop is always your first line of defense, and I think it's safer because that's where the truckers stop many times also. But as I said earlier, a safe location, your doors are locked, and it's well lit. I do not want you pulling off on the road. I'm feeling sleepy. She said to get off the road, but she said as soon as safely possible. So don't pull over to the shoulder of the road. But I say a rest stop. Of course, you can stop any place where there's other people. I wouldn't go to a remote location just because it would be quieter and better for your sleep. I would say safe, well lit, and the doors are locked.
Thank you so much for that information. Megan, let's shift gears and talk about distracted driving, because that's always a big issue when you're traveling. And there's so many different forms of distracted driving. So Megan, what are the different forms of distracted driving that people should be aware of while traveling?
Right, like Ariel said, literally anything can be a distraction when you're behind the wheel of a car. But the three main categories are manual or physical, and this is a distraction, anything that takes your hands off the wheel of the vehicle. So reaching for something, eating something, handing something to a passenger in the back seat, anything that takes your hands off of that wheel is a physical distraction. There are also visual distractions. So anything that takes your eyes off of looking at the roadway. This could be billboards, other drivers doing weird things in their vehicles, literally anything that could take your eyes off of the roadway. The last one is a little bit more dangerous, and it is a mental distraction. So this is anything that takes your mind off of the task of driving. So as a driver, your most important job when you're behind the wheel of a vehicle is to get to your destination safely. So any combination of these distractions can be very dangerous, and it could result in a crash, an injury, in some cases, even a fatality. So it's important to know, just everything that could distract you behind the wheel of a vehicle. And distractions include more than just texting and driving, or eating and driving. It could literally be anything. Anything that diverts your attention away from the task of driving is a distraction. So looking away from the road for just 2 seconds actually doubles your chances of getting into a crash. 5 seconds of reading a text or an email is like driving the length of a football field, essentially blind, which not only sounds dangerous, but it is very dangerous. One thing that AAA focuses on is that hands-free is not necessarily risk-free. So in Tennessee, we do have a hands-free law, but we want to encourage drivers to really focus on those mental distractions. And mental distractions can last a lot longer than we as drivers think. So even if you are sitting at a stoplight and you are changing the radio station, or you're sending a quick text, as soon as you stop that distraction, a lot of times we think we're good to go and we're focused on driving. But the reality is that distraction can linger for up to 27 seconds. Now, 27 seconds may not sound like a huge amount of time, but when you consider the fact that when you're driving, more often than not, you're going 10, 20, 50, 70 miles an hour down the roadway. And 27 seconds, you can cover a lot of roadway. So for drivers, just be very cognizant of what is demanding your attention while you're driving. As a general rule, if anything is pulling your attention away from actually driving, then it's a distraction, and you should stop doing that behind the wheel. So ideally, you would take care of all of these items before you start driving, or save them until you end your trip. Because there's really no excuse to be distracted when you're behind the wheel of a vehicle.
You made some really good points, and this also reinforces the message that you need to plan out your drive, your route as much as possible, and give yourself those breaks. Give yourself times to go to a rest period, to do whatever you need to do, because there are so many things that can distract you. It could be your GPS. It could be that maybe your children are rowdy in the back of the vehicle, or they're hungry. And that is going to, of course, take your attention away from the road if you're turning around and constantly talking to your passengers. So there's so many things that we all need to be aware of to stay safe. And we've covered a lot of topics today, and I'm really appreciative that we've had you guys here to do so. This is pretty much concluding our episode. So we're going to go ahead and close out. I would like to thank our special guests for joining us today. We have Sergeant Aaron Loden from Ray County Sheriff's Office, Megan Cooper, the Tennessee Public and Government Relations Consultant from AAA, the Auto Club Group, and we have Kathy Wright, the Education Director from the Kyle W. Cannell Memorial Foundation. I want to ask our panelists, is there anything you would like to say as your closing remarks? I'll start with Aaron.
Well, we just want to remind everybody, as the holidays are upon us, that we're all safe and we all do our part in travel. The things that we've talked with you about today is all great tips from each of us. I can't say enough of what Kathy and Megan has stated today about driving, and take the extra steps that we've talked about. Allow a few extra minutes for travel. Plan your trip out. If you get drowsy behind the wheel, find a rest area, somewhere to stop and pull over for a while. Be safe, make smart decisions, and we want to keep our highways safe as we close out the 2020 year.
Megan, do you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, so just to echo what Aaron said, you've heard a lot of great information today. So if you are planning on traveling, taking a road trip for Thanksgiving, just plan ahead. We've given you plenty of resources to think about, but just if you're taking a trip, plan ahead, drive safely, wear your seatbelt. That way you can focus more on celebrating with friends and family and arriving home safely after the Thanksgiving weekend.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Kathy, what would you like to say as your closing remarks?
Well, I'd like to thank you, Ariel, for this opportunity and the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. I always love to talk about drowsy driving. The Kyle Cannell Foundation wants to keep Kyle's memory alive while educating teens on the dangers of driving sleep impaired. And I want everyone to know that NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, reports that there's 1.2 million drowsy driving crashes every year, with 83 million fatigued drivers on the road every day. So when you're on your Thanksgiving trip, remember that in most of the cars around you, there's a fatigued driver, and that is not a very comforting thought. So please be aware and awake. And that I do speak in high schools, not this year, but my presentation is virtual. If you want to contact me at the letter K, right, at don'tdrivedrowsy.org, I can send you the workbooks that go along with my presentation. So it will be almost as good as having me there live in person. Thank you so much. Y'all be safe.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. If we didn't get to your question during the show, please email info@tntrafficsafety.org so that we can answer you. So everyone, take care and drive safe.